I'm Amy. I would like to begin this update of the Fiji Food and Farm Project at the Willing to Give farm on Naitemba, surrendered gratefully at the feet of our Divine Heart Master, Adida Samraj, who instructs us to eat the excess offered from his great food dish and to remain always intimate with his blessing and awakening power. As many of you know, in 2015, Crane and I began working on a project with Naitemba's Kitchen, Farm, and Cooperative Food and Farm Board to maximize the availability of organic, raw food for the residents and retreatants on Naitemba. In previous years, the diet on Naitemba was composed largely of cooked foods. Some of the fresh fruits and vegetables came from the farm, and the rest came from off-island, primarily from Suva, where the vegetables are commonly grown with pesticides or in ground where herbicides have been used to clear the weeds or kill the jungle. Many of these pesticides and herbicides are now outlawed or heavily regulated and are no longer allowed near food in other countries. Two of the most commonly used herbicides in Fiji are paraquat, which has recently been linked to Parkinson's disease, and glyphosate, the active ingredient in Roundup, which is increasingly being linked to cancer. In fact, China, one of the largest producers of paraquat, has recently released a statement with plans to ban paraquat due to these findings, which is no small move. The combination of this information coming to light, devotees becoming afflicted with these diseases, as well as Bhagavan's call for the devotee diet to be composed of non-toxic, unsprayed, largely locally sourced food, caused us to look more closely at the farms from which we are sourcing our food for Naitemba and how we can do a better job of delivering the optimal quality and quantity of food to the Naitemba food table to ensure proper nutrition to those living on Naitemba and caring for Bhagavan's hermitage island. We even had to look at our own practices on Naitemba, as herbicides have been used to clear weeds from around buildings and pesticides have been used for certain types of pest infestations in the past. However, now that we also have a bee colony on Naitemba and harvest our own honey, it became even more imperative that all the toxic or inorganic or unapproved pesticides and herbicides be removed from the island. This initiative was headed up by Ted Progler in 2015, and now, as of 2018, Naitemba is still pesticide and herbicide free. This is really important for the health of our reef and the ocean around Naitemba as well. Much of this new information coincided with Naitemba transitioning to a primarily raw diet around 2014 and 15. We noticed that the food coming from Suva was not only heavily sprayed, it was traveling a long distance and waiting for long periods of time on boats. First it would be loaded onto the ferry in Suva, then sit overnight and all day before arriving in Taveuni, where it would be offloaded and reloaded onto the Turanga, where it would again sit overnight before crossing the next day to Naitemba. Often by the time food from Suva reached Taveuni, it had been sitting around 4 to 5 days, unrefrigerated, with the hope of it lasting a full week on Naitemba until the arrival of the next boat. This meant that as the week went on, the food got steadily worse. It would be less fresh and we would lose quite a bit to spoilage. This became much more obvious with the raw diet. We worried that if this pattern continued, the raw diet would simply not be significantly nutritious for people to be able to maintain in good health. We saw that we needed to source our additional food from somewhere closer to Naitemba than Suva. This led us to look into our shipping systems, where our food was coming from, and our own farm on Naitemba, and our budget for purchasing food from off-island. Our goals in the beginning were to get a clearer picture of how much raw food we would need each week. How much of that can the Naitemba farm provide? How much would need to come from off-island? Where could we get that organically, and how much would that cost? Those were our main questions. Crane carved out a support system that would allow us 3 years to answer these questions and get systems in place to implement our findings. Our first charter from Crane was to make sure that there was enough food on the table each week. To account for this, he added funds to the kitchen and CFB, so more food and supplements could be immediately purchased. He also gave a donation for supplements to the clinic and additional superfoods like chlorella and spirulina. He added funds to the farm for more labor expansion and fruit tree planting. Our initial findings could be synthesized into these key points. We go through significantly more food when eating primarily raw. The food we go through in large quantity does not keep as well, so we need to purchase them every week. For example, 2 to 300 kg or 450 to 650 pounds of bananas and papayas alone each week are needed for green smoothies. That's a lot of bananas and papayas. The Naitumba farm has different demands for a raw food diet than diets of the past. We needed a cooperative system between the Naitumba kitchen, the CFB, the Naitumba farm, and organic farmers in Taveuni, as well as the Suva office, where we would still be placing orders for locally and non-locally imported items. The Naitumba farm faced many challenges starting out. Not only was the Naitumba kitchen transitioning to a different diet, the raw diet, the farm was transitioning towards a new farming approach, more closely associated to permaculture and low-till farming techniques. As the pesticides and herbicides were removed from the farm, along with chemical fertilizers, Robin, Tim, and Ted began to focus on bringing back to life the sandy, salty Naitumba soil with a massive compost project. Robin and Tim continue to research nutrient-dense farming, implementing mulching and natural fertilizing techniques. Here's a video which covers this and what organic farming truly is.
Organic farming is actually kind of a new concept in Fiji. In some ways, you could say it was organic for a long time before the pesticides and herbicides came. But really, it was just unsprayed before. And Fiji is a third world country where a lot of, just really strong chemicals have been offloaded. People have started to finally notice in Fiji, after some time of using these chemicals, that you're not getting the same quantity of crop back and they're not getting the same quality. The local Fijians, the Indo-Fijians, they have started to become curious on their own what they could do other than just stopping to spray. What could they do to put life back into the soil? And that's what we're trying to continue through this project, which is figuring out, doing soil testing on different farms and figuring out what the soil is low in.
It's a very interesting contrast. If you look at what the island of Naitumba is, an old island. It has got volcanic rocks here and lime, which they don't have in Taveuni. But Taveuni is a much younger island, so the soils are much richer, and the weather is so much cooler there, and more rain. So it's the garden island of Fiji. So it's the perfect place to grow things.
One of the things we learned from the Tete group that was here doing organic planting is some of the stuff that's available in Fiji and particularly in Taveuni that adds the right things to the soil that's missing here in Fiji or low in. And so seaweed is one of them, and it grows, you just actually go right down to the beach, pull it out, bring it up here, and you either let the rain wash it when it's raining, wash a little of the salt out, or you just dunk it in tubs and get a little bit of the salt out and put it on the ground.
Just the minerals from seaweed and bat guano that can be found up in the caves, and fish meal that can be used in the soil. It's cheap and it's organic and it's natural, and when you see the life come back to the soil from it, it speaks for itself.
We tend to focus on the very sensitive salads and greens that can't travel. And because of the heat, these lettuces won't survive in the open sun, so we have to have a shade cloth here. And the only way to do it is to do it in organic farming.
Real organic farming, you put the seaweed back in, you put the compost back in. It's as important to take the time in between plantings to put the right things back in the soil so that the vegetables keep coming back with high nutrient density and good pest resistance.
This is the sort of soil that we're building up, and it's taken us, this bed is probably about just over a year old, and it's got a lot of compost in here. It's got seaweed, and what we've just started adding, which is a miracle, is what's called biochar. Biochar is simply charcoal, and it's very important in the soil because it acts as a sort of sponge which holds microorganisms, nutrients, water. And you can see from the way these tomatoes look, they look happy. We look to the plants to tell us if the soil is working okay. You can't use these for the soil, but they're really good for making mulch. So this soil is now completely protected from the blazing sun, keeps the moisture in. We put it on the paths so all the weeds are suppressed. So we just tip this stuff on all, and of course in 6 months this will be broken down to the most fantastic organic matter for the soil. So one of the principles we really try and follow here is to use as many as possible local indigenous varieties of plants. One of the ones we found is really good is something called Makuna bean. We pick the leaves, and these go into the kitchen and they go into smoothies. So we're trying to make use of the strong natural plants that do well in this climate.
So this is kind of one of the little areas where we start things that go to other farms. We've started some different herbs just to add some flavor to the food. So we now have sage growing, oregano growing. This is dill right now. It's all going to seed. So we let it go to seed, and then you harvest the dill flower that's gone to seed, and then we have seed to regrow our dill. And you can just see on here, we're starting to get some big, nice, red, juicy beefsteak tomatoes. One of those tomatoes made these 3 trays. And so these 3 trays are just sprouting. They're full of tomatoes.
One of the principles we follow is stay as close to nature as possible. And nature doesn't just have one crop growing, monoculture. Everything is mixed together, polyculture. So in this little area here, just as an example, we have our passion fruit providing us shade and fruit. Then we have basil plants for the herbs. We have gotu-kola for the green smoothies. We have papayas growing, which came out spontaneously in the compost. They started to grow themselves. Over there we have arugula for the salads. And they all living happily together and sharing the same space. So instead of having one crop, we've got perhaps 6 or 7. And that just makes total sense. And they all look pretty happy. So we really try as much as possible, within practicalities, to follow this idea that plants work in guilds rather than just in single crops.
So right now we're going to get 110 kgs of watermelon.
Letting the natural environment be our instructor, and learning and getting feedback and understanding what Adida was telling us. You have to use permaculture, you have to use biodynamics. All these approaches to farming, it's so different than the modern commercial agribusiness which we're suffering. And the other element which has been really wonderful to be part of is how we've started to develop this relationship with the farms in Tabiuni through work with Amy and her being there as a link between this island and all the organic process that she's describing over there. Suddenly we can just focus on the things that really do work and we need to grow here, and relax and let Tabiuni take over this. And they're happy to do that.
Wow. So this is all food we're loading for tomorrow. This is cabbage from Wailangi. We got about 30 kgs of cabbage from Wailangi. And then papaya, passion fruit. These are the mandarin that are growing on the farms right now.
Why not be creative in seeing how we can work cooperatively together and use our resources and share, and that's a whole nother level. And then things start happening which you couldn't imagine because of the synergistic cooperation. So that's really, we haven't only started this, and it's going to get, and it's going to be an inspiration for other people, I hope, to say, look, food production cannot be competitive. Take that out of the equation. Start working together.
So one of the immediate challenges that the Naitemba farm faced was how labor intensive it is to grow lettuce and sprouts year-round for 60 to 100 people eating large salads and smoothies daily as their main meal. With Crane's help, we were able to craft a cooperative plan for growing food between Taveuni and Naitemba. We sorted out seeds and made a seed bank for food security in case of cyclone, drought, crop loss, etc. The rest of the seeds were started in trays with the goal of bringing new varieties of high-quality food to the table. From trays, those seedlings get moved to the nursery. This nursery is now the hub where so much of the magic happens. The seedlings grow up in the nursery, and then they go out to the organic local farmers and devotees who are living and farming in Taveuni and growing food for Naitemba. Many of our farmers were recipients of shade tents, which Team Crane helped supply all over Taveuni. The farms that receive these one-time donations for shade structures are able to sell their harvest to Naitemba and put that money back into their farms, no longer needing additional or continual funding. They are now profitable organic farms with a reliable buyer, Naitemba's Kitchen, to purchase their organic food each week. And they know just what we are looking for because we give them the seedlings. And for all varieties of greens, including dinosaur kale, watercress, all types of cabbage, including English cabbage, Napa cabbage, Chinese cabbage, Wongbok, and even purple cabbage for some color. Cilantro, oregano, thyme, parsley seedlings, arugula, and dill all really help to make the food taste better and different each day. Some of the seedlings from the nursery go under hoops in my own garden area or into raised beds as we learn together how to grow organic food with the challenges of the tropics, including heat, excess rain, bugs, and drought. Simon received funds for his hoop house, and he was able to grow the only tomatoes of the rainy season last year. We are learning together how to produce delicate crops in smaller amounts through the rainy season, and the kitchen has reorganized to buy the same quantities of unsprayed foods from several small farms and farmers, rather than reverting to buying food from large farms growing food in herbicide-soaked earth out of convenience or previously presumed necessity of being able to get large amounts of food at one time from one place. This is where the Taveuni invoice is key, receiving Naitemba's weekly order and then locating the food from all the farmers involved, getting the invoices to Naitemba so that they can put payments on the boat each week, which allows us to pay our farmers on the spot when we arrive to pick up the food each week, which they love. We now work with over 30 farmers to put the weekly order together. We drive up the jungle back roads to remote farms to pick up the food, check on progress, and make sure toxic sprays are not getting used. Then we load it all on the boat and plan the schedule for the next week. Just as we were getting started with all of this, Cyclone Winston hit and destroyed most of the farms. From young to old, everyone came together and helped in Taveuni and on Naitemba, clearing the roads of fallen trees, cleaning debris, repairing pipes and reservoirs so we could replant and feed people once again. So replant we did, taking seedlings around once again to all our friends in the farms. These trees were started in the Taveuni nursery and then sent to Naitemba after the cyclone to bring back the papayas. This is the banana sapling replant, with the hope that green drinks would soon be back. We used the fallen plant matter as mulch and made the best of what the hurricane left behind. Leaves returned to the trees, and then the fruit. Ah, the return of the fruit. Little by little, we are adding new varieties to the diet and making lots of new organic allies along the way. When we have more than Naitemba needs of passion fruit or lemon, We juice and freeze it so Naitemba can have it year-round. This year we also added soursop. This freezing is made possible by Rick Kamek, letting me use his freezers. We still have a ways to go, but so much is already working. We are growing everything that's needed to make kimchi. We now have organic jicama growing in Taveuni. Jicama used to be produced only in Suva with pesticides. We also are growing cucumbers for pickling, peppers for pickling, and when we have extra peppers, we make lacto-fermented hot sauce, which is good for digestion, also adds flavor to the food, and is naturally sugar-free and good for you on the diet. So, our vision is that Beloved's principles be lived and shared in cooperation with one another in Fiji and become an example of cooperative, non-competitive, organic farming, where the health of the people, the land, animals, ocean, trees, and soil are all lawfully taken into account and serve as an attractive beacon of right life. With the pesticides and herbicides removed from the farms, the seed bank and nurseries are established for keeping steadily planting happening of our staples year-round. Systems are in place for invoicing, ordering, and planning schedules between farms and cooperating farmers. And the farms that have been helped get started growing for us are now able to sustain themselves with the weekly sales of the vegetables. We are seeing that if we are able to fund the upfront cost for the infrastructure of our vision, the farms begin to sustain themselves once off the ground, with good organic practices in place. The next phase of this project is to focus on variety and expansion. With the Naitemba farm producing certain staples with good success, Taveuni will be able to provide more of the variety. We have seedlings planted for ruby red grapefruit, Valencia orange, navel orange, mangosteen, Tahitian lime, and rambutan, as well as black sapote, cocoa, and even egg fruit. To get these trees in the ground and properly watered and mulched will be a big project for us. We are hoping to raise funds for a one-time build of a watershed and storage tank that will allow us to water through the dry season, as they get established, as well as irrigating the large organic jicama and pineapple patch year-round. Our outlay for the project is one shipping container that will be purchased in Suva for the main structure, corrugated steel for the roof, and lumber for the posts, 2 water tanks, and a pump. The total cost, we estimate, will be $6,000. For more details on the project, you can click on the link below to read the extended script from this presentation. We are grateful to every person who came and brought energy and showed interest and encouragement for what we are working toward. It has been such a blessing to be part of this wonderful service project, getting to work with wonderful people and their children, all bringing this vision to life. All gratitude to our beloved Guru for bringing us together in his service.